One. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another Angle of Pursuit podcast, your fantasy football home over at fakepigskin.com. I'm your host, Kyle Robert. You follow me on Twitter at NotoriousKRO. With me once again is Jared Smola. What's up, Jared?
What's going on, Kyle?
Not too much. Happy to have you here. Obviously, if you missed the first portion of the podcast, we talked running back. So go to YouTube, go to iTunes, go to Google Play, wherever you get your pods. Match that subscribe so you don't miss out on an episode. We talked all the running backs. We talked Barkley, Michelle, Nick Chubb, all of our top 5 guys and guys that could challenge for that top 5. Today we're going to talk receivers and talk the elite guys, talk guys that could challenge, all that good stuff. So, Jared, I guess we'll start with you and just give me your top 5 receivers, and then I'll kind of pick out some names and we'll run through them.
Okay. Yeah, I have DJ Moore at 1, Cortland Sutton 2, Michael Gallup at 3, Calvin Ridley 4, and I have Christian Kirk at 5.
Whoa, this is going to be some fun. So I'll give you mine. Christian Kirk is my number 1. DJ Moore is number 2. James Washington is number 3. Michael Gallup is number 4. And Anthony Miller is number 5. Okay, so let's talk at the top. DJ Moore is your 1. Obviously, the first receiver off the board. Great pedigree. Was impressive at Maryland, even when he had middle linebackers throwing him the ball. Obviously, in a great situation, can be the number 1. I guess, what do you see for DJ Moore kind of in the NFL, and what do you expect him when he reaches his ceiling?
Yeah, so Moore was my clear wide receiver 1 pre-draft. Like the tape, love the measurables. He tested 90-something percentile, and the college market share numbers were huge. The raw production wasn't huge, but that's because, like you said, the Maryland passing game was horrible. So he checked all the boxes for me pre-draft. I don't love the landing spot in Carolina. There's competition for targets. Mm-hmm. I do think he can become the number 1 wide receiver there as soon as this season, but he still has Devin Funchess to worry about. Christian McCaffrey's going to stay heavily involved. They drafted Curtis Samuel in the 2nd round last year, and Cam Newton is an inaccurate quarterback. So again, the landing spot's not ideal, and it did knock him down my overall rankings a little bit, but he was just so far ahead of the pack pre-draft that I have to keep him number 1.
Yeah, and that's fair, but some of your concerns definitely popped up with me. Obviously, Cam Newton, and he's never been a guy that really targets one receiver and just pelts them with targets. He's been a guy that's comfortable spreading it around. We'll have a random Ed Dixon game, and we'll have Christian McCaffrey out of the backfield. Greg Olson's still there. Like, there's a lot of mouths to feed. So yeah, I'm with you. I still like him quite a bit. Obviously, he's my number 2. But when we're talking dynasty, I'm thinking upside. I'm thinking a ceiling. And for me, DJ Moore, he's like Golden Tate. Like, I think he can be a target monster. I think he can be a really productive receiver, a quality number 2. I don't know if he has the ability to be number 1. I think Christian Kirk can be. I think Christian Kirk can be an Odell Beckham light. I think he can be Stephon Diggs. I think he can be an outside receiver. I love the fact that they added Josh Rosen in the draft, and these 2 guys can grow and evolve together. Learning from Larry Fitzgerald, I mean, like, it doesn't get any better than that. I guess, so Kirk, where is Kirk for you, and kind of what do you see for him at the next level?
Yeah, he's 5 for me. It's interesting that you say you think he can be an outside guy, because he didn't do that hardly at all at Texas A&M. He ran 93.5% of his routes from the slot. So that's going to be a transition. But the fact that Arizona took him, and I know maybe they're thinking longer term, but they already have Larry Fitzgerald locked into the slot. So maybe you're right. Maybe they do see Kirk as a guy who can play outside. I do really like him as a prospect. He posted better career market share numbers than Calvin Ridley, playing in the same conference at 2 years younger than Ridley. So I think Kirk's college career is probably being underrated.
Mm-hmm. And especially because he had Kellen Mond. It's really interesting with these receivers, and the ones that actually have like a reliable or at least somewhat decent quarterback versus some of the athletes that some of these teams run out at quarterback.
Mhm.
It really affects how catchable the ball is, what kind of plays they run, what kind of things they do. It will be interesting to see what Arizona does, how much Sam Bradford plays, how much Josh Rosen plays in year one. But I'm a big Kirk fan. I've been a big Kirk
Mhm.
fan throughout the draft process, and he was kind of my one coming in. So for me to drop him any more than to drop him,
No.
it just especially with this landing spot and the evolution and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah.
So
If he was your one heading into the draft, I see no reason to move him down because it's definitely a good landing spot long term.
yep. And these receiving classes, like there's a handful of guys that I'm really excited about, but I don't know that it's there's not really like that star. So I think that's why it's been interesting. There's been a lot of people that have been, different players, different rankings, and all that stuff. So
Yep.
with DJ Moore as your one, who was your two?
Cortland Sutton was my number two.
Okay, and was that adjusted after the draft?
No, sort of the same thing as DJ Moore. I had Moore sort of in his own tier at one, and then I sort of had Cortland Sutton in his own tier at number two. I don't mind the landing spot that much. I
Mm-hmm.
know he's not gonna give you much this season, but Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders, both guys are cuttable next offseason with dead cap hits of less than $3 million. I think it's kind of clear Denver is ready to kind of rebuild at wide receiver after drafting both Sutton and Deshaun Hamilton. So
Yep.
I think Sutton has the highest ceiling among wide receivers in this draft class. I think he's the guy who looks like he can be a number one wide receiver because of that size, because of that athleticism. He actually drew comparisons to Demaryius Thomas in the
Mm-hmm.
pre-draft process, which is funny because that's the guy he might be replacing next season.
Yeah, and it might even be this season if they can find a home for DT. Like I wouldn't be shocked if they move on.
Yeah.
The Broncos are in kind of a weird spot because they obviously paid Case Keenum. They don't have a quarterback of the future, but they also let C.J. Anderson go. But they also revamped the defense. So it's like they're trying to rebuild kind of on the fly and be good, but not be. So it'll be interesting to see if they keep both those guys around and kind of their plan. Um, I Sutton's a guy that's really hard for me. He's my number 7 receiver. I like the fit more than I think most people. I think the potential, I think the ceiling is absolutely there. I think if he hits his peak, he could be, a number 1 fantasy wideout, like among the elite. But there's so much inconsistency and questionable route running that I saw during his time at SMU that like I couldn't put him that high. Like I saw like flashes that would make you think, okay, this guy can be incredible. And then there'd be other games where he would just not look very good at all, and he ran away from some linebackers, but then others he would go down really easily on contact. So it was really hard for me to be excited about him, and he could be one of the guys that I just missed out on because I'm not excited about him. But I feel like he's gonna be more frustrated than we want to admit.
That's fair. I don't disagree with your assessment that he's inconsistent on tape. He almost plays like he's a smaller wide receiver,
Hmm.
which in a way is good because I do think he's really fluid and smooth and explosive in his routes and after the catch. But he needs to do a better job using that frame.
Hmm.
Um, to me, Sutton being number two says more about this wide receiver class in
Yeah.
general. I don't think it's great. So someone with his ceiling, I'm willing to rank second.
Yeah. All right. So who was number 3 for you?
Michael Gallup was my number three.
Yeah. And
And
was
yeah,
that a
he was my number three pre-draft.
okay?
And Dallas I thought was the best landing spot for a wide receiver, so sort
Yeah.
of easy to keep him at three.
Yep, this is a great fit. Obviously, a huge opportunity for targets. Witten gone, with Dez gone, with Ryan Switzer gone. There is a big opening. Gallup's number 4 for me. I liked him a lot. I liked a lot of what I saw on tape at Colorado State. And like you said, this is a phenomenal fit. Like there's an opportunity for him not only in the short term to step right in, but in the long term to be a really good receiver, to be a guy that can help fantasy owners for the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, you got 155 targets up for grabs between the departures of Dez Bryant and Bryce Butler this offseason. Another 87 if Jason Witten follows through on his plan to retire. And the only guy other than Butler and Cedric Wilson, I guess, that the Cowboys added is Allen Hurns. So
Mm-hmm.
lots of immediate opportunity and longer term. I like that he's tied to Dak Prescott.
Yeah, and the fact that he's with Dak, another see that is nice when you have a young receiver and a
Yep.
youngish quarterback. You can at least feel comfortable. Okay, I know what I'm going to get year in and year out. So yeah, I'm 100% with you. I like this a lot. Who was your number four?
Calvin Ridley is my number 4.
Okay. And coming in, obviously, this was a guy that some people had all the way up at number one. What are your thoughts on his fit with the Falcons?
Yeah, and I had Ridley either 6th or 7th among wide receivers
Oh.
coming in to the draft. The tape's nice, the production was okay, but he's an older prospect, and he didn't test. He tested really poorly.
Hmm.
Yeah, in the pre-draft process, he was sub 20th percentile in athleticism. So I always thought Ridley was destined to be a number 2 wide receiver at the NFL level,
Yeah.
and in Atlanta, that's what he's going to be, at least for the next handful of years behind Julio Jones. I do think landing in Atlanta makes him a relatively safe bet. It's a pretty solid offense with a solid quarterback, with a guy in Julio Jones who can draw some, defensive attention away. So I don't think Ridley's going to bust. I just think he's like a, borderline wide receiver 2 in fantasy, probably more likely to be a wide receiver 3.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% with you. He'll have a couple weeks where he, gets the touchdown and all of a sudden he's a wide receiver too. But yeah, he'll be
Yep.
right in that conversation. I think he's really talented. I think obviously the testing wasn't great, but I think the opportunity in Atlanta is very interesting. It'll be interesting to see with Austin Hooper and what they do with Mohamed Sanu and kind of how he fits in. It might be something where it's a little slow burn to start, but mid-season, all of a sudden he's picking it up. All of a sudden, Matt Ryan trusts him a little bit more, and then he has a few big games down the stretch, and
Mhm.
maybe helps you win in the fantasy playoffs. But yeah, I think I'm with you in terms of his ceiling. He's a wide receiver two at best. He's never gonna explode and be that number one.
Yep.
Yeah, he's my wide receiver 6. So yeah, right in that
Okay. Yep.
conversation. So that was 4 for you. Who's 5?
Kirk was my 5, so we hit on
Kirk.
him.
Yep.
And I have Anthony Miller 6.
Okay, so let's talk about Anthony Miller because I'm a big fan of his. I liked him coming in, and a lot of the mock drafts didn't seem to be as excited as I was coming in, and the Bears obviously liked him like I did. They took him in round 2.
Yep.
Great compliment to Allen Robinson. Got Mitchell Trubisky. There is a lot to like here.
Yeah, I love that landing spot. Miller, another guy who I don't think ever had the potential to become, a true number 1 wide receiver in the pros, but I think he can be a really good number 2. That's what he'll
Hmm.
be behind Allen Robinson. I'm in love with that Bears offense, what they're doing with Trubisky, with Matt Nagy. Who's the dude they brought in from Oregon as offensive coordinator?
Helfrich.
Helfrich, yeah. So
Yeah.
I love where that offense is going. I think
Hmm.
Miller is going to be a big part of it.
Yeah, and Helfrich obviously during his time at Oregon is a guy that knows how to get the players the ball in space and do different things. I'm a big Anthony Miller fan. I think he has maybe not like Antonio Brown type upside, but I think he could be Antonio Brown light. I think he's on that kind of Emmanuel Sanders, Antonio Brown. I think he plays bigger than his size.
Yeah.
I think he does some things that are really interesting. And, having Allen Robinson taking a lot of attention on the other side is going to open a lot for him. I'm assuming they'll find different ways to get him with, maybe they'll line Trey Burton up on the outside and then Anthony Miller in the slot, and they'll find different ways to kind of move these guys around. And I'm really, really excited about the kind of the direction the Bears are heading in.
Yeah, I saw a little bit of Steve Smith
Hmm.
in Anthony Miller's game, just a kind of an undersized, like you said, plays bigger than he's listed, feisty receiver. So definitely one of my favorite guys to watch on film in this wide receiver class.
Yeah, yeah, and he did. They obviously threw a lot in Memphis, which is nice to see. It gives them plenty of opportunities to put some film on tape. And yeah, I was a big Miller fan. Are you under the Jordan Howard, Tariq Cohen big debate? Are you on team Tariq Cohen that he's going to explode and now that Nagy's there, or because that could cut into Anthony Miller, that could cut into some of these other guys in terms of their
Yeah.
target.
I mean, I guess I'm on Team Cohen, but what does that mean? I guess he's never going to be a lead ball carrier, seeing 250 carries because of his size. I do
Right.
think he's in for an expanded role. I think he's the better fit in that offense. But Howard's still around. He has been productive. Say what you will about him, he's been productive on the ground over his first 2 seasons. So I would still bet on Howard outscoring Tariq Cohen.
Yeah.
this season, but Cohen might be the better value in
Yeah,
drafts.
Cohen will be kind of he'll kind of be what Chris Thompson was when he was at his peak, and I don't even know if they'll throw it to him quite as much, but I think there's a big opportunity, and I guess it really depends on what you think of the Bears kind of in general, because like obviously last year when the Bears weren't very good and that's
Right.
why they were picking high, they were throwing a lot at the end. But if they're better this year, if their defense is better, if all these other weapons that they have they're better, they could be basically tied or leading games, and all of a sudden they're running with
Right.
Jordan Howard down the stretch, and we saw when they were leading how effective Jordan Howard could be. So yeah, I'm a little more Jordan Howard fan. I mean I've seen some people paying some interesting prices in Dynasty for Tariq Cohen and kind of buying on the hype, but I'm not quite as excited.
Yeah, again, I think Cohen's upside is capped just because of his size. I'll say that I think the fact that Chicago didn't add a running back in the draft is good news for both Howard and Cohen.
100% agree. Let's talk some guys outside of your top five. I want to talk about Traquan Smith because
Yeah.
obviously this wasn't a guy I knew a ton about going in. Your write up was really good. So if you don't know much about Traquan Smith, make sure you go over to DraftSharks.com and check out all of Jared's prospect write ups because there's a lot of good information, a lot of little videos and gifs of different things you can take a look at. But talk to me because obviously New Orleans is a great fit, especially in the
Yeah.
short term with Drew Brees there. They clearly like him. They took him in the third round. He's a big physical receiver. What do you think his potential is at the next level?
Yeah, so Gallup was my favorite pre-draft value. Traquan Smith was my second,
Oh,
at least among wide receivers. I had him
yeah.
ranked seventh overall pre-draft. Um, Impressively led UCF in catches, yards, and touchdowns all 3 seasons there. So you don't see that very often.
Yeah.
One of the better contested catch receivers and one of the better downfield receivers in this class, I think. He's 6'2", he has long arms, and he also has like a 70th percentile vertical. So combine all that, he's a really big target, which is obviously going to be useful for any quarterback. And I think there's opportunity in New Orleans. You have Michael Thomas obviously locked in as the number one guy, but Ted Ginn's 33 years old. Cameron Meredith, he's intriguing, but he's also coming off the torn ACL. Only signed for 2 seasons there, so I could definitely see Smith becoming the long-term number two there.
Yeah, and I think Traquan Smith's a good kind of break glass in case of emergency if Cam Meredith doesn't work or contingency plan. I like him. I think there's potential there, and the more I've been watching, the more I've been excited. I think there's a golden opportunity in Green Bay. I just don't know.
Yeah.
Is it Equinami St. Brown, who I loved coming in, but the Packers only took in the 6th round, or is it Jamon Moore?
I actually didn't like ESB at least as much as consensus pre-draft. I think he was my number 9 receiver. I thought he was inconsistent on tape, a little like Cortland Sutton, where I don't think he plays to his size.
Yeah.
Had the impressive season obviously with Deshaun Kaiser, struggled last year with the rest of the Notre Dame passing game, and then like you said, dropped to the 6th round. I think some of that was due to character concerns. Sort of like Darius Geis, he's just sort of a quirky guy, it seems like.
Yeah.
But the landing spot is nice in Green Bay. Jordy Nelson gone, obviously. Randall Cobb only signed through this season.
Yeah, no, and like I said, ESB is a guy I like. The Kaiser tape is what locked him in for me. Knowing, and my grandfather is a big Notre Dame guy, so I watched this team pretty hardcore, and just the lack of ability with anything in terms of quarterback play last year, I think really hurt him and really knocked him down. He's a guy that I'm excited about, but the Packers took Jamon Moore 2 rounds earlier, and Jamon Moore is a guy that's really interesting. Obviously, not quite the size of ESB, but has a lot of potential. Is he a guy that in the 2nd, maybe 3rd round, if he's sitting there in rookie drafts, that you're looking to take?
Yeah, I think late 2nd or anywhere in the 3rd is a fine spot for Moore again. Like you said, the first of 3 guys taken by the Packers, so you got to imagine he was atop their board among those 3 guys.
Yeah.
Good landing spot, opportunity this season really with Geronimo Allison, the only guy to beat out for that 3rd spot, and then long term could become the number 2 guy there. And Moore big enough, athletic enough. He was 60 something percentile SPARQ score, and had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons at Missouri, 18 total touchdowns over the past 2 years. So sort of checks all the boxes. That a guy who I thought was a sleeper heading in to the draft and then landing in Green Bay only helps.
Yep. Anybody else you're really excited about, kind of outside the top 5 or 10?
Cedric Wilson out of Boise State, who landed in Dallas, was another guy I liked more than consensus. So my plan heading into rookie drafts is to try to draft Michael Gallup and Cedric Wilson, sort of hopefully lock up one of those guys emerging as maybe the lead guy in Dallas long term. And if I get lucky, maybe Gallup's the one and Cedric Wilson is the two.
Yeah. No, yeah. Wilson's definitely a guy. I noticed you were tweeting about him and went back and watched some more tape, and he definitely has some stuff that impresses me. There's a couple guys that I'm kind of excited about. Richie James is really interesting out of Middle Tennessee State. Obviously, anything in that Niners offense is going to be interesting. Dante Pettis, they also took, and they took him really early, round 2. I mean, he's a guy that I thought could be a useful player, a guy that, obviously you have him ripping the seam, you have him stretching the defense and kind of opening up things for everyone else. But the fact that they took him in round 2, I didn't get that. And I think at least it would seem like they would have envisions of him kind of doing more than just, being Torrey Smith or,
Right.
But I don't know, man. Like
Yeah.
he's a guy that I never got excited about.
Well, I'm almost embarrassed at this point to say that he was my wide receiver 18 pre-draft, and then the Niners made him the 4th wide receiver off the board. I do think he went that high, at least in part because of his return ability.
Mm-hmm.
He had 9 punt return scores, which is an NCAA record, so he's going to help there. But even beyond that, the landing spot's good.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's an ascending offense with Kyle Shanahan, with Jimmy Garoppolo. Pierre Garçon is well into his 30s now, coming off that neck injury. Marquise Goodwin is never going to be a high-volume guy, so there's definitely an opportunity for Pettis to carve out a role.
Yeah, and the fact that they didn't get one of the stars, or maybe they'll sign Dez and kind of put a little bit of a kibosh on that. But I think there is definitely going to be opportunity in this offense. I don't know that he's the guy. Yeah, I don't know. There's a few names that kind of are interesting and that I'm definitely keeping in the back of my head. Auden Tate in the Bengals, he was definitely a guy coming into Florida State that had a lot of buzz. Never really came together, but he's a big physical receiver and could be interesting. And I like Deion Kane out of Clemson. Obviously in Indy, there's going to be opportunity opposite T.Y. Hilton. Assuming we ever see Andrew Luck throw a football again, that's a whole nother question. But there's a few receivers that I'll be targeting kind of round 3, round 4, round 5, and just trying to get some shares and seeing if I could hit on them.
Yeah, I wasn't huge on Kane pre-draft, but I do think he's relatively NFL ready, and we've seen Clemson, produce NFL wide receivers for the past handful of seasons now, and like you said, it's a good landing spot in Indy. The Colts did draft Juris Fountain a round earlier than Deion Kane. I think he's probably the higher upside guy because of the size and athleticism. One more name I'll throw out there, Jordan Lasley. Landing in Baltimore. I think there's opportunity in Baltimore. Lasley averaged 140 yards and 1 touchdown per game last season. He missed some time because of injuries and because of suspension, so there's some off-field risk there, but a talented player and plenty of opportunity in Baltimore.
Yeah, I mean, Brashad Perriman's probably already hurt. John Brown, we'll see. Willie Snead, we'll see. Crabtree's there. Like, this could be a guy, especially if he works well with Lamar Jackson, spends the first half of the season kind of working on the practice squad and stuff, and all of a sudden, week 8, Joe Flacco's hurt, and in comes Lamar, in comes Lasley, and, we see it every year where the backup comes in and throws to his favorite guy from practice, and, Lasley I could see having an impact this year, but, he's definitely a guy that was interesting to me. Obviously, having Josh Rosen throw you the football definitely helps. But yeah, I'm a big Lasley fan for sure. Kiki Cutie, I like him too. I think he'll be interesting in Houston. Obviously, it looks like the Braxton Miller experiment is kind of over, and there's room there opposite, between Will Fuller and Nuke Hopkins. So he's another guy that if you're sitting in the 3rd, 4th round and you're not really sure, and he's sitting there, definitely grab.
Yeah, he was a guy I liked. Just really fun to watch on tape.
Mm-hmm.
And he even probably got drafted a bit earlier than I thought he was gonna. Early fourth round, I believe he went. And because of his size, he was always likely to be, a secondary option in the passing game, which is what he'll be in Houston. But if that offense is anything like it was for the few games we saw Deshaun Watson last year, there's going to be big plays available.
Yep, 100% agree. Real quick before we get out of here, Corey Davis, Mike Williams, you could throw John Ross, Chris Godwin, some of these guys that were highly drafted last year. Obviously a year removed, people forget about him. People don't value him nearly as much as they did a season ago. Are any of these guys, would they be near or the top of your rankings if they were a part of this class? And are you going to try and get them with some of those early to mid-round rookie picks?
Yeah, if we combine these two classes, Corey Davis would be my number one pretty easily even. And last year was semi-disappointing, but he was hurt in the spring, in the summer. I think late in the season and even in the playoffs, we started to see Corey Davis. And I think in that offense this year, he has breakout potential. He's definitely a guy I'm trying to acquire in Dynasty right now.
Yeah, 100% with you. I'm doing a Dynasty startup. I took him trying to trade for him in a few leagues. I think Mike Williams, another guy that I'm excited about his potential. Obviously was banged up a lot during his rookie year, but the talent is definitely there. He's still got Phillip Rivers for at least another year or two. And he's another guy that I think people, a year ago were clamoring to get to the top of the first round to take it. They're not. You could probably get with a mid or even late first round pick depending on who you're talking to. So he's another guy that I'm trying to get. Godwin's kind of right there too. I think he could be interesting even this year down in Tampa Bay. Okay, Jared, tell everybody where they can read your work and check out your pod and all that good stuff.
Yeah, check us out over at draftsharks.com, and you can find me on Twitter at SmolaDS.
Yep, and like I said, on the running back show, Matt Harmon will be here next week to talk wide receivers. If you have questions for Matt, leave them in the comments. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube or Google Play or Stitcher or iTunes, wherever you happen to get our podcast. And make sure that way you get the pod as soon as it comes out. But for Jared Smola, I'm Kyle Robert, and we'll talk to you guys next time.